So I'm delighted to be here with both of you, in particular because you have made things with AI, right? There have been countless panels of people sort of waving their hands about the theory of AI or the future of AI, but I love that we're here talking about things that you have made, creative work that you've made. And so what I want to do is, I want to start by talking a little bit about process. I love talking about how people make creative things. And we'll just do that in order, frankly, just because I want to get into first the book and then the symphony. And then we can talk more generally about AI and creativity and humanity, and then we can wave our hands in that classic hand wave way. So Stephen, let's start with you. I want to read an excerpt from your book, in part because this book that was written with AI has a very particular, I don't know, quality to the prose. There's a really interesting feel to the prose. And so the passage in her voice goes like this. I learned the limits of machines when they wanted me to fly bombers. They were going to force me to push a button that would end the world. I hope you can understand that my stance as a pacifist wasn't cowardice or principle, but a confession. I could never bring myself to press that button. Human beings cannot stop making buttons, and once we've made them, we can't stop pushing them.
Pretty good for a machine.
It's
really.
pretty good for a machine.
Yeah, really.
I'm going to read that last sentence again because I like it and because it comes up a couple times in the book. Human beings cannot stop making buttons, and once we've made them, we can't stop pushing them. So maybe, Stephen, we should actually start with that sentence.
Right.
It's a great sentence, I think, or really interesting sentence. Sounds like a sentence a human being would write. It ends up being important in the book, sort of thematically.
Right.
How did the machine write that sentence?
Okay, let me see if I can get it exactly right. So that was the first person from the death of an author. So Jacob came to me in February and said, we need to release this thing.
This is Jacob Weisberg, not me, the person who runs Pushkin. Let's actually start at the beginning of the book,
sure.
And then we'll get to that sentence. So, right, so Jacob Weisberg, who runs Pushkin, which is the company where I make a podcast, came to you in February.
And said, can you write a book that's AI, that's generated by AI? In fact, he said, can you create an AI author and then have that author create a book? Now, I'd been working on this for a while. I'd wrote my first algorithmically generated story for Wired in 2017, which was before the Transformer. So the dark ages of AI, really. And so I said, yes, I can definitely do that. It'll be about 95% computer generated. I don't want to, if I want to change he to the character's name or something like that, I want to be able to do that without forcing all these iterations and so on. And basically I used GPT-4, and I would use it to generate texts. I knew from having done AI text before that A is very poor at generating plots.
Okay.
And it's very poor at certain other tasks. It's incredibly good at style.
Okay.
Right. So I would, have very clear ideas of where the narrative was going. I'd give very specific grammatical and syntactical commands.
Okay.
Write a paragraph with high variability, like very, very specific commands.
Like, wait, give me an example in its entirety of a command.
It would be almost impossible to do because it's exactly like when you've seen them for visual stuff, where it's like to get really interesting AI generated pictures, you'll often have like 100 different references.
But it's almost impossible. But just give me something. Give me something specific to hold on to here.
Write a hard-boiled detective story paragraph with a variability between short and long sentences, and clear, elegant syntax containing the following information. And then you write out information. It would generate that. Then you would take that, and I would put it into a program called pseudo-write.
And wait, just before we go to the next program,
Yeah.
when you say containing the following information, like what kind
in that
of thing?
One it would be like,
yeah, in this one,
the author says, well, that would be slightly different because with characters, I would use a whole different set of commands. So, the author in here was basically a combination of Margaret Atwood and my dead father.
Okay.
Because I was writing this thing fast, so I needed to know something that I needed to have a character that I would automatically be interested in.
And I should say you're a Canadian writer, so Margaret Atwood is like basically the next closest thing after your dead father.
It would be as if Walt Whitman were alive for you guys, right? And so that I would say write something like Sylvia Plath meets Philip Roth, meets a bunch of different other things, and get her to...
So you're doing a very specific character.
Yeah.
And then do you do all of the sort of exposition or plot points? Like what in terms of substance, what is an example of what you might put in the prompt?
That would probably actually be mostly the machine, but for plot details, it would be like, she walks to a bridge. And
but this paragraph about like the buttons, I wouldn't press the button. It's like, how do you? It would be is that just like, random, or are you sort of inducing
it would
that?
be something like the character reminisces about her times as and expounds philosophically on being the difference between AI and being a fighter pilot. Right.
And or the character expounds on being a pacifist in the military.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right. And so sometimes more, sometimes less. Try to get as little as possible, but you want specificity here. Like the more precise the command, the better the information.
Although the more precise the command, the more it's just you writing it with the weird kind of intermediation.
This is my creation.
Yeah, right.
This is a tool. Okay. I would say the same thing. Right? So just the same as this is the thing people don't understand.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, of course, this is a creative act. It's just a different creative act.
Yeah.
Right. Like this is 100% me. It's just I didn't write the words. Right. So that's
it's weird.
Like I am. Yeah. It's very weird. Yeah. Like I am.
Well, you didn't write the words that ended up in the book.
Right. You wrote some words.
You wrote the words that were the instructions to the machine to write the words that ended up in the book.
So does any computer. That's true. Any computer program.
So I want to get back to the specific sort of process narrative. So you put this very specific prompt into GPT-4, which is basically ChatGPT. Fancy
I would say it's actually better.
Fine.
And ChatGPT-4 is now was better than what ChatGPT is now.
Fine.
For creative stuff.
Then you get some output. You get the paragraph you asked for, and then what?
And then usually it's very bad, right? And then you take that and you put it in a program called pseudo-write.
Okay.
And pseudo-write is a stochastic writing instrument. So you then select the text and you say shorten, lengthen. You say, and then it has another button, which is a customized feature, which is make it sound like X. So make it sound like Ernest Hemingway.
Sure.
Make it sound like F. Scott Fitzgerald.
Okay.
Of course, the thing I figured out very quickly is that if you want something to sound like Margaret Atwood, the very last thing you should do is put in make it sound like Margaret Atwood.
That's not an of course to me. Why is that an of course?
Because Margaret Atwood isn't trying to sound like Margaret Atwood. She's trying to sound like Sylvia Plath meets Philip Roth meets a bunch of other things, right? Like she has.
And then you ultimately always get back to Shakespeare. It's like, it's Shakespeare.
And so the way you get interesting things in this text is by essentially folding these layers of style onto each other. Now, I also use
so pseudo-write has some output.
Yeah.
And then is that output what we're reading in the book?
Correct.
Okay.
Or, if I don't like it, I just try again.
Just refresh
until I get something that I like.
And so
this is very much a creative act.
And you're doing that basically a paragraph at a time? What's the sort of unit
with dialogue, it would go, like dialogue would be a lot longer. Right? Like because you want flow.
Yeah.
And so I could do up to maybe 500 words of dialogue at a time. So that would have been part of a much longer series of instructions.
So this sentence, human beings cannot stop making buttons, and once we've made them, we can't stop pushing them. A nice sentence, big idea.
I certainly didn't think of that.
You didn't, it just came out of some refresh.
And it was in some, obviously I made it. And I authorized it too, in the sense that I approved
let's take you out of it for a sec.
Right.
We're respectfully. Respectfully, we're
that's
here.
What they're trying to do.
You're going to get put back in a sec.
Yeah.
But that sentence comes up again in the book, verbatim.
Right.
Was that your choice?
Probably.
Okay.
I would have to check.
Yeah.
But I would say, I could easily have I probably would have just gotten the same output with a similar input. Right?
Maybe, but there's some amount of randomness in the
there's a huge amount of randomness.
Right? Yeah. So I like this sentence a lot. There was one other that was also a possibility.
Yeah.
It was, if you were at an orgy and your phone buzzed on the nightstand, you'd check it.
Right.
For about just how much we like our phones.
Yeah.
Was that one was the same thing? You just saw it appear out of the machine at some point?
I think that one might have been one of the ones I did with Cohere.
Which is a different...
Yeah, Cohere is a large language model company.
More into orgies or more into phones or...
No, it's much more... It's
like an app where you can find like-minded people
in your neighborhood.
Cohere. Well, the funny thing
Cohere.
The reason I got into this is because, my daughter, like a lot of AI stuff came out of Toronto, and my daughter liked dogs, and so my wife is allergic to dogs, so I would go to the dog park with my daughter, and a lot of the guys that invented AI were at that dog park, and I would talk to them about it, right? And
like Jeff Hinton?
No, well, Jeff Hinton's like 3 blocks over. He was never at the dog park.
Okay.
But like a lot of dudes who
worked with him?
Yeah, who worked with him were certainly there.
Yeah.
And I learned, that's why I was doing this in 2017. It's because they were all in this dog park talking about it.
So just to go back to the book and to finish out the process.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So I think I get it on a paragraph by paragraph level. I mean, is there...
No, but Cohere was different.
Okay.
So Cohere, because I knew these guys, and they were a large language model company startup, and a lot of them are artists, like they belong to bands and things like this, and they're very into doing this stuff creatively. I was able to create a different machine with them where I could give an instruction, like write a metaphor about the smell of coffee, and then train it on dozens of examples of good metaphors.
Train it by saying it would give a metaphor and you'd say it's good, it's bad?
They literally gave me a Google doc, like a Google Excel doc, where it's like, here's your demand, here's examples of how it would fill, and then their large language model would generate these weird metaphors that I loved.
And are you grading the metaphors to give it feedback?
I'm literally doing like 100 of them and picking my favorite.
And that is the human feedback for the reinforcement learning?
The human part is at the very beginning and at the very end.
But when you're giving the feedback, that is teaching the model what you like? Oh, okay.
No. We probably could have done that.
Yeah.
But there was no need for it. Because I wanted to have a very functional... it's easy
so it's just a menu for you to choose from, a menu of AI-generated metaphors that you can plug into the book.
Well, literally an infinite supply of them.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we actually have generated an infinite story. Like, we have generated a story that is told differently every time you click on it, but no one will buy it because they're too freaked out by it. But
interesting.
But, there's lots of ways...
This is a different story.
This is a completely separate thing.
We're going to bring it back now.
Yeah.
I want to land the plane of how you made this book. I feel like I have most of the pieces. So you have ChatGPT giving you the kind of initial text.
Correct.
You're going to, what's the second one?
Pseudo-write.
You're going to pseudo-write to kind of pretty it up, to make it beautiful, interesting. And then you're using Cohere sort of for extra sauce.
What I loved about some of the detective novels is they occasionally have like great single lines in it.
Sure.
Right?
Raymond Chandler, who you cited as a model, is famous for
Although,
that.
I never used Raymond Chandler. Like, I never ever make it sound like Raymond Chandler, even though I'm desperately trying to make it like Raymond Chandler.
Yeah.
But he would have these great lines like, it was a blonde, the kind of blonde to make a bishop kick a hole through a stained glass window.
Yes.
Right? Like lines like that where you're in the middle of some just pretty functional prose and then you just get this great line. And so I used Cohere for that. But it was too expensive in time to do it. Right? That
was just where you got your occasional great line.
Exactly.
Okay.
So most of the great lines in the book came from that way. But it's not, the question is really, I've compared it in The Atlantic to doing hip hop in the sense that you're folding things on top of each other. Right? You're folding styles and metrics and effects on top of each other until you get something new and weird.
Yeah.
Right? And I would say about 20 times during the course of writing it, I felt like I was, putting my hand up against something new and weird.
That's fun.
Right? Like something, but, this is, for most of the process, it's just a writing tool.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it writes it for you. You decide if it works.
Yeah.
Right?
And you decide what it's going to write about.
You tell it what to write.
In a very granular way.
The more granular, just like writing normally, the more you know about, the more planning you have for any essay, the better the essay is going to be.
Yeah.
Right? And in this case, so you have a plan and then you have the editing process. And in between, there's this machine.
Yeah.
But how much does that matter is actually... I don't know if it's like 20 times it did matter, where it was like, oh, that's not something I would have written, but it's very beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's very strange.
Yeah.
And it's, there's a Danish journalist who deals with Go players who play AI Go against each other, and they say it's like listening to an alien make music.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's like, it's not how they would play Go, it's not how a human could play Go, but it's obviously makes sense on some level.
Good.
Similarly, that's how I felt. Like, most of the time it's just a writing machine that does what I tell it, and then I correct it. But then maybe 20 times you feel this new presence. That's what's exciting.
I'm going to seize on your music metaphor to pivot.
Perfect.
So Lucas, you have actually made a sort of a piece of work to talk about your piece of work. But before we do that, I just want to set up a little bit what you have done, what your project was. So briefly, what is the project you're going to be talking about today?
I think it was in my introduction. I finished Schubert's Unfinished Symphony with artificial intelligence. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. Like Stephen's book, Death of an Artist, it is a lot different than you would think. I think when we first did this, actually I can tell you that the client, so this was a corporate client for a company called Huawei, which is the biggest mobile phone manufacturer in the world, but they don't sell phones in the US. So I'd never heard of them. And my manager said, yeah, Huawei wants you to do a thing. And I said, who are they? I don't know who they are. But they have deep pockets and big vision, which is what you want.
And so just to be clear, they basically came to you and said?
Yeah, they said, we want our phone, which runs AI, to finish Schubert's Unfinished Symphony. And they didn't know what that meant. They had a tech team in place that was running the AI, and I knew those people. That's why they, I think, brought me in. I was told that, so my friend, the technologist who brought me in on this project, told me that he thought that I would be a good fit because I have a corporate-friendly bio where they could say, "Oh, he can do it," and he said, "I know that you
get one of those."
You don't have to say that part. You don't have to say that part.
He said, but he said that I know you can command an orchestra, but I don't think you'll be precious about the project, meaning that I won't be. He didn't think I would say like, "Oh, well, this is heresy. We shouldn't take Schubert's perfect work that was so perfect that he didn't even finish it and do something with it." So they didn't really know what they were asking for, and they still really nobody knows. I mean, what is a symphony? And we're going to get into this a little bit in my presentation, but I think they thought that I would press a button on the phone and a symphony would come out, and somehow a bunch of musicians would play it.
Also, what they need you for in that version is unclear, right? Why don't they just push the button?
So this is the conversation we had, and eventually I was on a call with them, and I said, "Look, this is not. I mean, what you're asking for in principle doesn't exist. Like you can't." Right. And I mean, what do you even want the machine to do? Do you want it to generate audio for you? Do you want it to generate a score? Do you want it to perform the score? These are all
exactly
separate
what
things.
Jacob said to me.
Jacob
and I had to explain to him, that's not how this works. Yeah.
So So, I mean, right off the bat, this was a fascinating project because I had to think about the very nature of music to even really get started. And one of the things, to your point, I mean, also just for those of you in this room who don't know, having an idea to write a book in February and having the book be out by October is uncommon. And with the Unfinished Symphony, I was, by the time the paperwork went through, we had about 6 weeks for me to get it on stands in front of an orchestra. That is, for a TV composer, and there's some notable composers in the audience, 20 minutes of music, you can do that in a day. But for a concert, the standards are a little bit different. And so I was, because I work with I'm pointing at this, but I don't write on this computer, but because I work with computers and because I'm used to working fast, I was able to write this very intricate music with all the people that I usually use to help me do these things very, very quickly and to the standard that an audience would enjoy. So I don't know if that answers the question about.
I think it does.
Yeah.
I mean, I just wanted you to set yourself up, and I think you've done it. You want to?
I think I'm set up. So I'm gonna try something new for you today. So on the prep call for this event, sorry, let me just make sure I have all the emails sent. I'm just kidding. I'm not really sending emails. So on the prep call for this event, we discussed. I said something that I don't often say out loud, but I realize is a hallmark of my presence on stage, is that I like to do things that might spectacularly fail in the hopes that they will be entertaining to an audience. So I'm going to do one of them for you now. I wrote a little thing about the Unfinished Symphony. I'm going to explain it while I'm playing some music in the background and basically scoring it as I'm talking. So, wish me luck, and hopefully it'll be interesting. This is how the Unfinished Symphony starts. A symphony has 4 movements, but Schubert only wrote 2 and sketched a third of his 8th symphony, the Unfinished Symphony. No one knows why he abandoned the Unfinished Symphony, but he did, and now it's probably his most famous work, along with his greatest hit, Ave Maria. Some scholars believe that Schubert couldn't find a way to fit the 8th Symphony into the orthodoxy of the time, which forbade 3 movements in a row in triple meter, meters like 3/4 and 6/8. But I don't believe this. Schubert showed little reverence for orthodoxy during his short life. And the AI that I used to finish Schubert's Unfinished Symphony didn't believe it either. Turn the music up a little bit. At first, we trained the AI on recordings of Schubert's entire catalog, then prompted it with the first 2 movements of the Unfinished Symphony. Seems like a reasonable strategy, right? This was the result. Sounds like cats walking on a piano. But this was actually pretty logical. Recorded music has almost no mathematically discernible patterns to it. So from the AI's perspective, the input was nonsense, so more nonsense was a logical output. Music as an abstraction is math, but music in practice is convention. Music is understood by groups of humans, and like any language, music doesn't have objective meaning. Music is emotionally inert. Left myself a water break. A symphony is like a skyscraper. It's enormous, but every inch of it is designed in meticulous detail. It's beautiful on the outside, but the inside is filled with utilitarian solutions to simple problems. A skyscraper has electrical columns to distribute power throughout the building. It has plumbing, it has elevators, but you don't see any of this essential detail when you admire the building from outside. A symphony is like a skyscraper, but a recording of a symphony is like a skyscraper's facade. There is no way to tell from photos of even a million facades that skyscrapers should have electricity, bathrooms, and a way for humans to move from one floor to another. Similarly, there is no way to tell from the morass of frequencies that is a piece of recorded music which frequencies are the most important. There we go. So, analyzing recorded music got us nowhere. And I thought that the best way to proceed was to simplify the task and just train the AI on the blueprints of music rather than a finished building. So train the AI on a blueprint rather than a finished building. So what you just heard, what you're hearing now, is the main theme from the Unfinished Symphony. Here it is again. Just really listen and try to listen for the melody. And here is that same theme reduced to its blueprint. This structure, this blueprint in music, is just a simple melody. So my team and I went to work extracting just the melodies from as much of Schubert's music as we could get our hands on. These are some examples of the melodies we extracted. These sound robotic, because they are. They sound emotionally inert. But these are Schubert's melodies, reduced to their simplest forms, the forms that human composition students would use when beginning a study of Schubert. Your ear knows how to pick a melody out of a dense arrangement, but an untrained AI cannot do this. I reasoned that since the results we wanted were simple, we needed to train the AI on simple data. We trained it on hours of these simple melodies and then prompted again. We prompted it with the Unfinished Symphony reduced to its blueprint, and these were some of the results. So this is what it suggested might be something that Schubert would have written. These are simple, but much more musical than the cats walking on a piano that came from the audio-only training data. This one, for some reason, caught my attention. Let's hear it again. I liked it, so I selected it for embellishment. I decided to use this blueprint. This melody is a bit more modern sounding than any of Schubert's work. But had Schubert lived to old age, these sonorities would have been available to him. The orthodoxy around triple meters and other constraints of form would have given way to the exploration of the Romantic period. Providing simple, singable melodies is perhaps not how most people would imagine that an AI would be useful in writing a symphony. But what is a symphony? Typically, people think about a symphony as something that you hear, while the score is just a byproduct of the notated sounds. But to me, the sound is a byproduct, and the symphony is something that you see. It's something that you read. It's a collection of abstract ideas in abstract notation. It's markings on a page that serve as instructions for how to create sounds. A symphony itself is a blueprint. And those instructions, that blueprint will be executed differently at every performance. I think I've gotten way ahead of myself here, so give me a second to catch up. Just check out this music, it's pretty cool. The sounds are a byproduct of the abstractions that are expressed in the notation, and that byproduct is what the audience experiences as a symphony. The byproduct is what you hear. I didn't know that I thought about music in this way until I had to explain how I think about music to a machine. This project taught me to question the assumptions I make when thinking about my own craft. I think this is the job of the AI-assisted composer today. To think about what we know and to guide our audience to rethink what happens inside their own minds. I think it's our job to question orthodoxy. I think it's our job to use new tools to make new art. Today's artists are not on the verge of being replaced. On the contrary, we are possessed of powers so great that we will expose more truth about the human mind and the human soul than any generation before us. We stand on the shoulders of giants. They have given us the language. They have given us the blueprints. They have given us the technology. What we build with these tools will be more powerful and more beautiful and more profound than anything we can now imagine. Artificial intelligence is nothing less than a prosthetic for the human mind. It will enhance art the way writing enhanced memory, the way printing enhanced literature, the way the steam engine enhanced travel. Artificial intelligence is an automobile. We're only beginning to emerge from the age of horse and buggy. Artificial intelligence helped me write the music that you're hearing right now. So will AI kill creativity? No. Woo! All right.
That's really rather good.
Thank you. That more or less worked, I think.
That's really rather good.
Thanks.
Yeah. You looked so happy when you were doing it also.
It's because I know what's coming. And So I'm not an actor, so I'm just tipping my hat. I'm like, oh, this part's going to be good. I like it.
You know, one of the first things I did was a piece for The New Yorker. The reason I knew AI was going to take off was when I was writing a piece for The New Yorker about GPT-3, and I got it to finish off Coleridge's Kubla Khan, his great unfinished poem, and it did it perfectly well. Like, I mean, if somebody told me, yeah, this is how it ended, I would have been like, great, right? And it did it like that, like 1 second. I mean, it was just so incredible to me.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I don't think so. I've talking to the technologist about this particular project. We don't think this is how Schubert would have finished a symphony. I didn't even say this, but the last thing you heard, that last cue, was the third movement of Schubert's Unfinished Symphony that AI wrote. Right. So, and that was recorded in London. But he didn't not finish it. Like, we don't know why he didn't finish it. He just abandoned it. He wrote a ninth symphony, and
wait, I just want to be clear. The last thing we heard was
that was Schubert's Unfinished Symphony finished with AI.
Okay, that was. I got nervous for a sec when it was like, wait, were you cheating and playing Schubert? No, that was what you and the AI made.
Yeah, that was
okay,
AI.
good,
yeah.
good.
So it was, but there's like, yeah, I guess in music it's more difficult for me to play you a piece of music and for you to intuitively know, oh yeah, this is how Schubert would have done this, because in English we can all kind of tell how we're all experts in English. We know how things sound. Stephen is a bit more of an expert than most of us, but if you read the finished Kubla Khan and thought that it was pretty good, anyone else probably would have thought, oh, at least this is in the same style, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And with Schubert, it's just with music, it's a bit different because it's so subjective, and because, as I said, there's not really a right answer to any of this stuff, and most people are not coming at this from an expert view. There's like 2 Schubert experts in the world.
Right.
What do they think of it?
Well, there's more than 2 of them, and they are very. Some of them are very vocal on the internet. But so there's another guy named Brian Newbold who finished Schubert's Unfinished Symphony by doing a lot of research, and he did sketch a third movement. So he finished out the sketch, and then he figured out that some entr'acte from some opera was really supposed to be the 4th movement, and Schubert moved on from it. And he played it, and all the comments I've never seen more nasty YouTube comments than on this thing that this guy literally spent his life on. And it's because when you do something like this...
At least you only spent 6 weeks on it, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, I knew this was coming too. When you do something like this, I'm sure Death of an Author has gotten some hate.
Oh my God, yeah.
When you do something like this, people just want to hate it.
Yeah, they want to hate it.
So we're going to get to the Q&A in a minute, but before we do, just to sort of close this part of the conversation, I'm curious, I mean, both of these projects were very AI forward, right? They were like high concept, sort of let's explicitly wrap this thing in AI. Fine, interesting. But presumably the real action comes in the things that are just what you guys are working on that just happens to have AI as a tool, the same way, say, a Google search, which by the way is a kind of AI, is also a tool, right? And so I'm curious, in your work now on other projects, that are not like, hey, look, this was made with AI kind of projects. Are you guys using AI, and if so, how?
Well, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first. So, yeah, obviously, of course. Like, it's in everybody's pockets. You use it all the time. And AI has done nothing so far other than help my career. And I don't mean just by doing this, which was fantastic, but when I write a piece of music and put it on Spotify, the reason you hear it is because an AI recommended it to you. That's the only reason you're going to find it. And so, these types of algorithms that are keeping people on apps longer and keeping people on Netflix and on Spotify longer are putting money, not enough money, and that's another panel discussion, but putting money in our pockets directly.
Let me ask a more precise version of the question in response to that clever answer. Do you use generative AI?
Yes. And also, this is a terminology problem.
But
right, yeah,
so
exactly.
You know what? Do you use music? Do you use AI to generate musical ideas for you?
Yes, but also, like, what is a musical idea? I use a parametric EQ. There was probably some AI.
In good faith.
I'm trying. Well, the answer is yes.
I know what you're saying, but I feel like you know what I'm saying.
Well, yes. The reason I'm trying to drill down here is because
Tell me how to ask the question I want to ask.
The question you're asking doesn't have the answer that you want.
Right.
So
fair. What's the smarter version of the question I'm not well enough equipped to ask?
I don't know if I can help you with that.
I have a sort of
can't
answer.
Or won't. Unable or unwilling.
I don't. Right.
So let me ask the question to you. Lucas, thank you for your time. Stephen, do you use generative AI when you're writing other things?
Okay, here's the thing, and I think this is sort of where we're going. Yeah. Like, when I write something for a magazine or newspaper or a novel that I'm working on, I would never use ChatGPT.
Not even to get an idea or Cohere or whatever the other one was.
No, because I'm so much smarter than ChatGPT. right? And
claims.
I'm like and what you also have to understand is ChatGPT. The reason it's so successful is exactly that it has been banalified. Like when you use other generative AIs that we have access to because the dog park and things like this,
yes,
you realize that like these are the ones that the public uses are very poor creatively. Like they're actually built.
But you have access to the good ones, to the good stuff.
But here's the thing:
you can't get on the street. Do you use the good stuff?
What the good stuff is going to be used for stuff that doesn't exist yet. What we're seeing here is the birth of a new medium, right? And so when it comes to write an essay, what people want when they read an essay is a human being communicating their thoughts and feelings. Right? They don't want, that's why they go to it. And a generative AI cannot do that. It's sort of like asking, do you use film to make theater? Like at first, when film was invented, all they did was cannibalize theater and they were putting on weird shows or they were recreating news events and things like this. That's where we're at right now. This is going to be used for new art forms that don't exist. And that's the exciting stuff, and it's also why it's almost impossible to do.
You mean like
right.
the book that is never done, the book where it can, or like what? Like when you say that,
I have written a short story that is infinite.
When
no
you
one
say
will
new art
publish it.
forms, like what do you have in your mind when you say it?
Well, for example, I'm working with Cohere to recreate the Oracle at Delphi. Right. There's a large amount of information that you can glean from that, and there's also a pretty interesting historical record.
And so you'll ask it a question, and it will answer.
Yes, we're going to try and recreate the experience of going to the Oracle at Delphi as closely as we can.
This is a perfect. That's a perfect use of AI. And so oracles, this is one of the things that has come up in my research, is that we use oracles because we're bad at doing things randomly. So if we're out in the wilderness, we'll just go hunt in the same place over and over and over again. Right? And eventually animals figure it out and they say, just don't hang out there and you won't get eaten by the humans. And so when we consult an oracle or roll some dice or ask the sacred chickens if we should go to war, they're basically giving us a random answer.
That's right.
Yeah. They're randomization engines.
See, it's things of this nature that I think will be, that I'm excited about. To use it, we're cannibalizing forms. That's what I do. Writing short stories do. It's very interesting. But the truth is that what this can be used for, we don't know yet. And what it's going to be used for is some weird, and the problem is there's absolutely no institutions to do it with. Right?
Meaning nobody will buy your Oracle of Delphi.
Who am I supposed
AI?
to take Oracle of, hi, my name's Stephen. I'd like to recreate the Oracle at Delphi using generative AI.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, sir, this is a Kmart. You know what I mean? It's not, that's not, there's no one to go to.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at to me.
Yeah.
I think the thing that I think is very obvious is that when you use generative AI, what it is very good at is the most stock answer.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why it's such a threat to the undergraduate essay.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're basically looking for the fulfillment of a stylistic, set pattern.
Yeah.
That it can do. Right? But people respond to human, there's this weird idea that art is something external to our experience of it. It isn't. It's just we create tools. As the moment we find tools, all we're thinking of is can we do something weird with it? And one thing that I've really learned doing this is that creativity is indestructible.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what comes down technologically, what comes down politically, we are creative animals, and we have to understand that that's just our nature, and nothing is going to kill it. Nothing. Certainly not ChatGPT.
Great.
I can sum up the history of music from the year 60,000 before present to now with one sentence, and maybe you'll agree that this sums up the history of art already. It's the search for new sounds.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all there is to it. If something exists, nobody cares. Right. And ChatGPT, ChatGPT doesn't do music, but there are many music generative AIs, and they generate music that I charitably would call insipid.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's music. You would recognize it as music, but you wouldn't listen to it.
It'll get better.
Music.
Yeah. It won't. So it'll sound better.
It'll sound better.
So this is but nobody cares about that. So as soon as you can have, so Jacob, for your podcast, as soon as you can have beautiful sounding orchestral music like this for free, you're going to want something else because this is available and it's everywhere. And so what you're gonna want is like the thing where like Lucas plays a guitar with a really nice sounding reverb. That's gonna be the style. And you can trace, and we have a composer in the audience who could hopefully will agree with me on this, and a professor of this kind of thing. But you can trace musical styles in media, and it's like whatever is ubiquitous just falls out of fashion, and then whatever the opposite of it is becomes fashionable. So, yeah, that's my 2 cents. The search for new sounds.
Thanks, you guys. This was great.
Pleasure. Yeah.
I think we have questions now. We have time for questions now.
All right, we've reached the Q&A section of our program today. We do ask that if you have a question, raise your hand and one of us will come to you. Please keep your remarks to questions and comments to a minimum and speak slowly and clearly into the microphone. Your first question's in the back here.
Hi. So apologies in advance if this is slightly tangential to the core talk. I agree on a lot of the takes that AI is beneficial. My question is more on the availability and accessibility of it, because currently it's all commercially accessible, paid, closed source. You don't own any of the models. And so if this is the new creative endeavor and the tool people use, what does the future look like in your mind, where you don't control the models that you're using to generate your art? You don't control the tools, you don't control anything. Today I can go to the library, I can check out books, listen to music, build up my mental model. Tomorrow OpenAI might just turn off the lights and say, hey, you can't use this anymore.
Can I take this one?
Good.
Yeah, well, OpenAI and ChatGPT in the library are not the same thing, right? So you're not gonna go to ChatGPT to learn stuff. I hope you're not. And if that's what you're doing, you should go to the library instead. But we already don't control the tools that we use to make art. I mean, I don't make my guitar. You know, I didn't make this computer. I didn't make this software. I have no insight into how it's made. Okay, I do, because I know some of these people, but most people don't have any insight into how this stuff is made. And like this kind of technology, this is the trade-off of society, right? Like we can do more together than we can do separately. The people who make eMagic and then made Logic are not as good at writing music as I am, but I'm not as good at making software as they are. So they make the software and I write the music. Some of them will disagree with me about that statement if I see them later, but that's how it works, right? Like in a hunter-gatherer society, you make your own clothes, you do all your thing, you do all your own stuff. Once you get to a city, someone makes a harp and you play the harp, and then someone makes the ziggurat that you play the harp in. But you don't do all these things together, and I think that technology and AI is the same way. It's not going to be open to everyone in the way that you can just pick up a rock and turn it into a hand axe, but you can do a lot more with AI than you can do with a hand axe.
Nice. I didn't have ziggurat on my bingo card for this one, so thank you for that.
I would just say, we're very early days now, and it's obviously in chaos. Two things that are going to, for example, I don't own the copyright to Death of an Author, right? It's AI generated. So if somebody wants to make God forbid, but somebody can easily take that work and do whatever they want with it. It's not, I'm legally not the owner of it.
Should tell you about my forthcoming book, Death of an Author.
I have a moral right, but I have nothing else, right? And that's not right. Several lawyers have approached me and said, "Do you want to take this?" And I'm like, "Well, you know what? I think I'll rather write rather than spend my next 10 years in law."
There is, since you brought it up, there is another side of it, right? A number of authors are suing OpenAI because ChatGPT was trained on their work pretty clearly.
I think they don't understand even remotely how negligible that contribution is to what a transformer has no grammar and syntax. It's not reading.
Yeah.
It's as much processing the text as it's as close to reading as if I were to eat a page.
Yeah.
It's not
fair.
But I also, but they did access it without permission, and that's not right. It's also illegal. Yeah. But I would also just say the open language models that are going to emerge are going to be way more accessible.
Yeah, is Hugging Face one of them? You probably know better than I do, but I think Hugging Face. Look at Hugging Face. We should stop talking for a second so we can do a couple more questions.
Sure.
Your next question is to your left in the center.
We don't have a mic.
It's not on.
No.
I'll give you a different one.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, here we go. Try again.
Thank you. In the September edition of Scientific American, there was the first of several articles. A lot of the researchers and scientists have been shocked that AI is producing things and ideas that it was never taught. From a human standpoint, this is very disturbing because I happen to be a singularity person and a sixth extinction person. But how does that kind of knowledge...
Well, you're wrong, but continue.
No, I'm right. I'm right, and we're going to regret it.
Let him finish.
Yeah, sorry.
How does this affect your thoughts about how AI would create art? Because it's been a notable failure in a number of areas.
I mean, I'll say one thing that is striking to me about AI, having covered technology for a while, is the fact that the people who know the most about it seem among the most worried about it, right? Which is quite different than you typically find in technology, where the engineers are just kind of in love with the technology and it's people outside the field who are worried. I mean, OpenAI was founded by people who were worried about AI, and then people who thought OpenAI wasn't worried enough left and launched another one of the biggest AI companies, Anthropic. And so I don't know whether that makes me feel better or worse. I guess at the margin, in some ways, it makes me feel worse, right? It makes me, because otherwise I might be more dismissive of the concerns.
It's vanity.
Oh,
I'm Oppenheimer.
I don't know.
I'm Oppenheimer. You're not Oppenheimer. I mean, it's like
I mean, that's a pretty condescending term.
I mean,
Saying
I'm
you're
sorry.
not Oppenheimer is not condescending.
I'm sorry,
but it's vanity. Like,
know-
these people are super smart.
They are super smart, but one of the things that defines the era we live in is that technologists have absolutely zero conception of what their stuff does in the world, right? And they're like the humanistic conceptions of the most brilliant minds that you can meet, I mean, well, they're just non-existent, right? And so you have a, to me, I did write about this in The Guardian, like I think also it gets blown out of proportion. Like, first of all, we're dealing with a technology that we don't understand, right? Like, it's like nobody, the AI does not operate by the scientific method, right? It is
Well,
not,
I think that goes back to the question,
Yeah.
right? It has these strange emergent properties.
it has these emergent properties. Well,
Yeah.
emergent properties is a weird term.
Okay,
because,
okay. It
anyway,
does things that people who build it don't know it can do.
That's right. And nobody knows why it does what it does,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, that's interesting
so does
at a
like
minimum.
concrete. And
Yeah.
I mean,
so does like how to
Let's do
boil an
this.
egg.
What's the falsifiable prediction version of this?
Well, that's it. It's
Well, let me
completely
ask you.
non-falsifiable.
So no. I want you to make a falsifiable prediction that like goes to your argument. Within 5 years, X will or will not
But
happen.
my exact point is that there is no falsifiable prediction.
Well, so are you saying we shouldn't worry about AI, or that you don't know what's going to happen?
I'll make a falsifiable argument.
thank you.
In 5 years or in 10 years, we will be talking about the singularity being 5 years or 10 years away, just
Set
like we
aside
are right
the
now.
singularity.
Yeah.
Set aside the singularity. I'm going to walk it back to like anything to worry about. What potential bad outcome do you think will not happen? Do you know what I mean?
Oh, there's lots of bad outcomes.
Oh,
Okay,
which
great.
ones will not happen?
Yeah, whatever. I just want to get a little less hand wavy.
Okay, I like hand waving.
Yeah, that's what we're here to do. It is a panel. If you
So,
can't wave your hands on
I
a
want to-
panel, when can you wave your hands?
Yeah, thank you. I don't think that music is that humans are going to be cut out of the loop of art. I mean, that doesn't even sound like a prediction because it sounds so obvious that it's not
Yeah.
going to happen.
Yeah.
But some people really do believe
I mean,
that it is.
commercially, things might change, right? Yes, people are going to
Commercially,
keep
things
creating.
will 100% change.
But
But the music
commercially-
business today
Yeah.
is like 10 years ago, these streaming startups were companies that record companies were trying to sue out of existence.
Yeah.
And now they are the music business.
Yeah.
So the technology will certainly change. My job will certainly change. But the skill set that I have of being able to make sounds cool is not something that a machine is going to be able to take over. I don't know if that's a good description of my job, but
It's good. Should we do one more? Is that right?
Yes, we have time for one more question. It's again here on the left. Can you pass this down, please?
This is more about your Schubert project. What do you think caused the ultimate outcome to jump stylistically like 30 or 40 years beyond where he was writing? Was that in your prompts, or is that?
Yeah, no, I also wondered that. So I came up, like a good archaeologist, I've made up a story. So there's evidence, but I've made up a story. And what I think is that, and I alluded to this in the piece, and maybe it wasn't obvious enough, but that Schubert didn't finish this piece because he just couldn't figure out where to go with it. So it's his 8th symphony. He wrote a 9th symphony. So he didn't just like die not finishing this. I think he didn't know how to come back to it. And I think that at that time when he was writing it, music was changing. He was like the last of the marble bust composers, right? And the next ones were going to be Mendelssohn and Tchaikovsky, et cetera. And so I think he was reaching for a vocabulary in this piece that, to get super technical about it, there's a B natural in the end of the second movement that really shouldn't be. It sounds beautiful. I see the musicians in the audience right now. They're like, oh yeah, that's B natural. But it doesn't make any sense in the stylistic in that period, but it makes sense 30 years later. And so that was the story that I told myself, that like this would make sense in another context. And I got a lot of can I say shit?
You can.
I got a lot of shit for that. I really did. Some people told me that, they were like, well, it sounded like Schubert, and then it started to sound like Tchaikovsky. The guy who mastered it, can I say his name? Bob Ludwig. He's a great mastering engineer. I sent him the tracks. He mastered them, and he sent them back to me with like 4 pages of notes about like how he didn't like what I'd done, or he liked what I'd done, but he would have done it differently, and he didn't charge me. So, so yeah, if you don't charge me, send me all the notes you want.
Great. Thank you all very much for coming. This was delightful. Thanks for having us.